Hello and welcome to Thrive for Men. I'm Nat Nissen and I'm being joined today by the legendary Paul Roos. Now, I did ask him how he'd like to be introduced because his introduction could literally take the whole hour. But everyone knows Paul Roos through Australian Rules Football and now through his leadership coaching. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had a footy background, played for 17 years and then learned a lot about sort of behaviours and role models and leadership, but didn't know where it was going to take me. And then obviously I started coaching the Swans midway through 2002. And through that process, spoke to a lot of companies, around values and the Bloods and what we'd done, and then took a bit of breather with the academy, the Swans Academy, which I really loved. And part of that was teaching the under 11s all the way through the under 18s about leadership, about not just kicking, marking, handballing. Took the Melbourne job, which was obviously a huge leadership job, not as much technical coaching because I had Benny Matthews and Daniel McPherson and Brett Allison, George Stone, Jade Rawlings. So my assistant coaches were really good technical coaches, but a lot of it was around leadership and culture and behaviours and all those sorts of things. And then about 4 years ago, I met up, I already knew Jared Murphy, who Jared had worked with Geelong after I'd done the Sydney, Emil Studham and Warren Everett. We started a company called Performance by Design. So we've been doing that for 4 years, and we're now in a lot of big companies, a lot of startups, a lot of medium companies all throughout Australia. We've got some international clients as well, which is fantastic. Some in America, which is great. So I'm really passionate about the leadership component, and really stemmed from my time at Fitzroy and playing Sydney and coaching Sydney and then coaching Melbourne.
Thank you. Now, I know everyone would love me to talk to you about football the whole time, but we're here for Thrive for Men. So what I want to talk to you about really is your leadership component and, how we can help men in the community and society with leadership roles, perhaps things you've done in the sporting arena. What do you think are the largest problems that men are facing at the moment in our community?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably what I'd firstly say is football's become a really safe space. So I learned a lot from that around men's health, mental health, whatever you like to call it. I mean, and I learned from sort of hard days of the early 80s where it was no vulnerability, go to train, great bunch of guys. I mean, I've reconnected with them since I've been back in Melbourne. We go for a walk every Sunday morning. There's about 5 or 6 of us. But, not a lot of depth to the conversation. It's a lot more depth now with those same guys. But what happens in sport, it's a truly high-performing industry. So then it sort of transitioned into full-time football, probably the mid-90s when I went to Sydney. So then I became a full-time player. So then we had to start to think as an industry, not just about Paul Roos as a footballer. It's now that our players aren't working, what do we have to do outside of footy, where we work? And then, how long would it have been? Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I'd be guessing a little bit. Then we noticed players, openly coming into coaches and saying, look, I'm not feeling that good. And so then we would start having the conversation around, okay, why aren't you? How are you going? So my point is AFL clubs provide a lot of opportunity, a lot of tools for growth. And I've seen the industry grow enormously. And as a result, with the public, Tom Boyd, Wayne Swass, so it's almost been a poster child for men's health and men opening up. So I'm really proud of being part of that. And hopefully players that would talk about me at Sydney or coaching at Melbourne would say there was always a really transparent environment and we talked about the whole player. So on that, what are the most, I think we've come a long way. So what I would say to the men listening and even the ladies listening as well, be prepared to open up, talk about it. That's the number one thing I see. And every time a player would come into my office and start telling me their story, the body language when they walked out, knowing that their coach understood now what they were going through. And I was so happy because I would think, gee, now I can relate to them better. So the number one thing I think is be vulnerable, open up, tell your story. Everyone is there to help. And then, to your point around what are the main problems, then we can unearth those problems. Then we can look under the bonnet and we can say, okay, well, that person needs this, that person needs that, whatever that may look like. But thankfully, we're starting to have the conversation. We've got a long way to go, but we're at least starting to have that conversation.
And what are you finding in all of your corporate work, without obviously taking out confidentiality and going into detail? What are you finding with leadership and men in the workplace? Are they opening up more? Are they struggling? What's going on for them?
There's still a big gap. I think that's the biggest thing, because it's still in the corporate world. It's getting better and we see good cultures, but it's still about the budget and about the strategy and about the share prices. There is a real opportunity, and it comes back to leadership. We recently read a study, it was done last year, and they talked about the hero leader, I think the strategic leader, and the vulnerable leader. They didn't use exactly those terms. But the interesting thing was the most successful companies were led by the vulnerable leader, which is fantastic. So the ones that are now prepared, the leaders that are now prepared, the hero leader was the one that everyone said, oh, geez, look at him. Roosy said he's fine. Every single day he's coming in, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. How can I be like him? The strategy guy was just purely the X's and O's. But the vulnerable one was, I had a bad weekend. I just want to apologise for the meeting today. I'm not feeling myself. And so people connected with those. So what I would say to the leaders, you will shape your organisation. If you want men in the organisation to have honest conversations and you're a male leader, you have to do it yourself. If you're a female leader, you're probably more qualified than that, to be honest, but it's probably the same principle, providing with a really safe environment as a female leader. So it probably doesn't matter too much whether it's a male CEO or a female CEO. It really is providing that same space for everyone in the organisation, but particularly the men. As we know, you and I have spoken about this before, women are more likely to have a deeper conversation, aren't really?
Absolutely.
Let's be frank. So it's incumbent on that CEO, no matter what the demographic or where they come from or who they are or whatever, to create a safe environment. There's so much information around. Most people would hear of Brene Brown, who's become an advocate and a star for vulnerability and honest conversations and psychological safety. So what I would implore the leaders, walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. So many companies talk about people and they don't really care, to be perfectly frank.
Absolutely.
To have the conversation and do something about it.
Do you still see the old school, men's mentality in a lot of, certainly a lot of, I notice in a lot of bigger businesses, there's still that really old school boys kind of mentality going on. Do you think we need to change that from a very young level? I know your son Dylan is running amazing courses for younger men to help them develop. So do you think that we need to provide more at an educational level about mental health and men's health?
We've got a captive audience, Nant, of kids. Last time I went to school, I didn't have an option. I don't think kids have an option. We have a captive audience of 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds that have to be educated. We have an opportunity to educate those next generation of people, and that's why I'm so proud of Dylan and what he does with his course Prince to Kings, because he's taking the opportunity with young men as a role model and taking them through, from 14 to sort of 20 odd, and taking through some of the things that he faced now that he's 27 sort of thing. So, but we have a captive audience. I don't understand how our education system hasn't changed over the last 100 years or however long, certainly since and it's still about maths and geography and English, et cetera, because to your point, you're absolutely right. Some of the CEOs or some of the main leaders have been doing what they've been doing for so long. And as much as they want to change, it's very difficult for them to change because their teachers would do this,
Absolutely.
do this, don't cry, don't whinge, don't complain. So it's very, very hard. And I'm probably in that generation. I'm 58. So it's hard.
I'm certainly, even at an all-girls school, our teachers were very, don't be like that. Harden up. You don't need to cry. And I remember one teacher throwing a book across the room and hitting a girl in the head. So I'm with you. I grew up in those days where, it was harden up, even for girls. So it's, and we've chatted before many times about the fact, and I'll go on a rant about the fact that there's no nutritional help
Yeah.
or health help at school still. You know, I think they're still being taught what I was taught. So mental health is even further behind.
If we're trying to shape a generation, we're trying to change behaviours. The earlier you can do it, the better. You know, we're seeing a really unhealthy population. We're seeing a rise in suicide. We're seeing a rise in mental health and depression and anxiety. You know, why wait? Yeah, my thing about the health system is really interesting. It's a lot. Why do we wait till someone gets sick?
Yeah.
Why don't we try and save the dollars and cents and try and educate people around eating habits and what's healthy and exercise and diet and meditation and all those sorts of things? The sooner we do it, the better. And then generationally, we take pressure off all parts of our system. But in today's day and age, we just don't seem to want to have those conversations. And thankfully we are today, and thankfully Dylan's prepared to have. And there's some progressive, really good CEOs we deal with, and I'm sure there's some really good school teachers and some really good principals.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's changing a whole system.
Yeah, 100%. That's
which is different than us being able to meet wonderful people who want to change. It's getting down into the actual system, isn't it?
We're talking about a system, you're right, because there's school teachers. I tell you what, they're the most underpaid people. We've now seen the value.
One of the most important jobs.
I always rated school teachers because I remember I worked at AFL and I used to go and do footy clinics in primary schools. I thought, my good, I've only got them for an hour. They're playing footy.
I know.
So I've always had this enormous respect for school teachers, but I know now parents that are homeschooling. Yeah, so there's some fantastic principals, fantastic schools, fantastic teachers, but we are talking about a system. We're talking about how do we create a system that every person comes in and learns about things that are going to take us forward generationally as human beings.
Absolutely. So what do you think women can do to help men with their mental health? Because look, I've certainly found that mental health, we talk about it more, we speak about it more. It's you see it on social media more. Are you okay day, etc.
Yeah.
But what I'm also finding is that a lot of people are saying, look, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to approach that. And for me, it's a little bit like CPR. When you do your CPR training, people will always say in the class, what if I get really scared and I stuff up? And the instructor always says, any CPR is better than no CPR. Yeah. So for me, any listening, any help, any communication with someone that's struggling is better than none.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Absolutely. So what can women do? I mean, just have the conversations, and if men are getting a little bit frustrated, just use your intuition to back off a little bit, but don't let it sit there. The other things that women can do is ring your husband's friend, your partner's friend. Look, Rosie, I'm really worried about, Freddie or Billy or whoever it is, okay, well, I didn't pick that up. Have the conversation, care about people. And I think that's the main thing. Translate, because I know clearly partners and, wives are going to care, but try and translate that into a conversation and work out just different mechanisms. I think what I've learned over the years as a coach is there's so many different mechanisms to coaching,
Yes.
And you can't just let it go at one. Tammy, my wife, Tammy's, she probably knows me well enough to, there's times when she won't talk to me, which is fine. So sometimes it's about inaction. Probably that's a little bit frustrating, but go back, bring a friend, ask your girlfriend on a walk, look, how's your husband going? Because I guarantee that your girlfriend's husband might be going through the same thing as your husband. Oh, gee,
absolutely.
I didn't know that. How about we get together and, let's just open up the conversation or do you mind, can I introduce Paul to Terry or Fred or whatever? So just keep having the conversation. Don't let it sweep under the carpet, but just know when to put the accelerator down, know when to put the brake on, and know when to use different tools that you've got at your disposal. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's just that, like, as you say, just keep having conversations and keep that genuine curiosity and wanting to know keep the care there.
Yeah, and also, understand your male partners, how they operate. They're learning. Do they like to watch telly? Oh, okay, I'm going to sneak a Netflix video on tonight. What about what's this? Do they like to read books? Here's a book. So I think understanding their personalities is really important.
Absolutely.
You know, they're not a huge talker, then it's unlikely they're going to sit down and spend an hour with you. Okay, so how do I navigate that? You know, if they are a huge talker and all they want to do is talk about footy, okay, I'm going to start with the footy, but I'm going to weave in, did you just read the article about Tom Boyd on the weekend? Oh, no, who's Tom Boyd? It's the Bulldogs player that came out and spoke. Oh, okay, really? Oh, Wayne Swash is doing great stuff with. So there's just, I think the personality, understanding their learning techniques, understanding, you know, the red flags when they're just not themselves. You know, and I think that's probably the easiest thing to do for the wives or the partners, because clearly they're with them for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, they know them well and they get on with them well. So use your intuition to be able to unearth those problems and work out what they are.
Awesome suggestions, Rosie. Well, what do you do when, you know, like everyone has bad days? What do you do to help yourself when you have bad days? What are some tips?
Yeah. I mean, self-care is huge. I think that's one of the most underrated things that you can possibly do. You know, I think for me, I live in South Melbourne now. I've got access to the lake. I've got access to the tan. I've got some weights down in the garage as well, sort of thing. But getting outside, it's such a simple thing that we don't really take advantage of enough. You know, get outside, go for a walk. You know, I'll walk over the lake, just sit near the lake. You know, sit on the edge of the lake at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, watch the sunset, sun go down with the jacket on. You know, often, you know, by myself. Tammy comes across, go for a run, go for a walk. I've been walking through Albert Park Golf Course, which has been great.
Oh,
you know,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Albert Park Golf Course. I've been walking through this. Look after yourself and don't apologise for looking after yourself. If we can be healthier as ourselves, you know, and don't worry about what it looks like for someone else. Don't worry about, I saw this video of someone doing a 10K run. I can't do a 10K run. Just be a slightly better version of yourself tomorrow than you were today, the day after than you were today. It can often be baby steps, and don't be too hard. We're really hard on ourselves as well. Give yourselves a pat on the back, you know, which is obviously sometimes hard to do, but or another technique is, you know, for the people listening, if there's someone out there that thinks and needs a well done, pick up the phone, tell them well done. Thanks for doing that. That was awesome. Well done. Everyone loves to be valued, you know, so tell people they're doing a great job. I think that's another thing we don't do often enough.
We don't do that really at all, do we? We don't even do it in the workplace.
No, absolutely.
With, you know, from my corporate experience, we wait for a review to hear about whether we're doing well or not.
Exactly. And you and I touched on a LinkedIn that Spider Everett did, and you asked me about it before. So for those that didn't hear it, Peter Everett was a player of mine. He was on a LinkedIn thing that we both heard and talked about me. And, yeah, I was just chuffed to hear, him talk about me the way he did, you know. So
it was incredibly heartfelt. It was really quite moving.
Yeah. So for those that are wondering, should I say something to someone, you know, how they're going to receive it, just tell them what a great job they're doing. You know, tell them how well they're doing. Tell them the impact they had on you. Pick up the phone to an old school teacher, a netball coach, a footy coach, or whatever it might have been. Tell them how valued they were in your life. And believe you me, it'll make a massive difference if we all start doing that.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a big change in the world?
Yeah, 100%.
Now, you and I connected especially because we both believe in wellness as part of leadership. You know, you can't really be a great leader unless you're well yourself and you can lead yourself. So what are some of the things that you think are so important with health that connect to leadership?
Yeah, one of the best quotes I ever heard was, "Your own health will determine the health of your business." And I thought it's really simple, but it's true.
Yeah.
You know, and what I every person that you're leading, whether you're owning a business or running a business or CEO of a massive corporation, everyone below you wants you to turn up the best version of you.
Yes.
Every day. And so that's one thing. All right. So I'd say that. So what is the best version of you? Now, that's going to be slightly different for everyone. Yeah. And I think that's probably the hardest thing about some of the diets, some of the exercise. I can't do that. Don't worry about that. Pick something. Yeah, we all know healthy eating is better than not healthy eating.
Absolutely.
So we all know some exercise is better than no exercise. We're not asking you to eat lentils or Brussels sprouts, more breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or we're not asking you to
exactly.
100 Ks a day. So find out, but we know if I'm eating healthier and I'm exercising, we're better. And the mindful part of it, the meditation, being present, we know there's so much data around that now also. All right, so that's the first thing. So look after yourself. What we also know is whatever that company is, even in a family situation, mum and dad, that's your culture. What's valued? Yeah. All right, so if the CEO is in the company gym in the morning, what do you reckon will happen?
Absolutely.
A lot of people will gravitate. If the CEO is leading the meditation session with Paul Roos or something like that and coming in and out, what do you think is going to happen? All right, so role model leaders is another thing. If you're a leader talking about people's health and no one sees you doing anything around it, then they don't make a connection to it. Doesn't mean they won't do it. But my point is, if you as a leader want to encourage it in your workplace, walk the walk first. And then when you're doing these things, set up your touch footy team and set up your walk around the tan and set up all these sort of things. And it makes a huge difference.
It's so right. I mean, it comes from the head down, doesn't it? I remember, this is a long time ago, but when I spent some time in corporate, I used to walk across to the park at lunch and take my shoes off and put my feet on grass. And it was when I came back to the office after lunch, it was quite condemned, because what I should be doing is sitting at my desk and working through lunch. But I do remember someone saying to me once, "You look completely different than when you left." And I said, "Yeah, that's because I got out in nature and put my feet on some grass and I decompressed before I came back in." So, but it was very difficult I found it quite challenging to be the only person when, you get back and the boss is looking at you sternly. And you don't really fit in because everyone else is looking at you saying, "Well, you're not working as hard as us. You took your lunch break."
And I remember when I was coaching in Sydney, and obviously the environment's really easy to do it, but we would run after the main training. So we would, instead of just walking back to the office, we would say, "All right, guys, who wants to go for a run around Centennial Park?" And we'd take off and run around Centennial Park, come back,
awesome.
Have a shower, and then get into our work in the afternoon. And there was times where I would literally get up out of my office and leave the office purely and simply because I wanted everyone else to leave the office. I didn't want to create an environment where they felt that they had to be in the office. I wanted people to be home with their family. And I knew I could watch tape at home. And so I would leave the office at days and say, "You see, guys, I'll catch you tomorrow." And I know that gave them permission to do it. So whatever the boss is doing is giving you permission to do the same thing. So let's be really, really clear on that.
Yeah.
So everything that they do is going to be emulated by most of their staff, to your point. So eventually you're going to get worn down. You're going to go, "Well, probably I shouldn't go for a walk today."
Eventually I was. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to fit in. We talk about people come into a culture and they fit into the culture. That's what they do.
Absolutely. It's too difficult to be on your own.
Yeah.
And to be doing something that, you're getting sneered at and snickered at. So you end up just thinking it was just so much easier. And I get a lot less trouble if I just fit in.
Yeah, simple.
Even though you're not honouring yourself and you're going against the best thing for you.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, we're talking about mental health. That's the worst thing for your mental health. But it's really difficult. I had a conversation with a gentleman on the weekend, and he's really struggling. And he told me he hates work. I said, "Okay, what I need you to do is think of work in completely different terms. Think of work as a paycheck. That's it, right? And I want you to." And I said this to him. I said, "What do you think the minimum hours you should do for the money that you're getting? Because no one's valuing him at work. No one cares about him." I said, "And all you need to do now, the minimum hours." And then his passion's in one of the arts. And I said, "Put all your energy into that." So that's the mind, but you shouldn't have to do that. That's the point. He shouldn't have to do that. And I'm saying this is an interim thing. So for anyone that's struggling out there in their job, my first recommendation is, probably should you be there? And is there another opportunity? Potentially, if you're saying, "Well, no, Ruzi, I've got to feed my family."
Yeah.
Take your focus away from it. If they're not valuing them, don't put any value on put the value somewhere else.
It's really interesting.
The value is on the dollars. The only reason I'm going to work, I worked at the AMP, and this is nothing against the AMP. So I
was that very old school?
Well, no, so here's the story. So I was a young kid. I wanted to play footy. I started the PE course, and my kids, they're always getting into me now because I lasted about 3 months, you know. So I went to, and I told the guy the story. So I went to Fitzroy Footy Club. The job for me was just the gym that they had.
Yep.
That's it. The gym that they had, the flexi hours that they had, and that's what I loved about the job. So I put up with all the other stuff because of what they offered. So my mindset, it was easy to go. I didn't actually like the work, but my mind was, I'm just going to do the job to the best of my ability, but I'm not really here. I'm just here to facilitate my ability to get to training half an hour earlier than the other guys that have to work, and I can use the gym in the off season. So my point is, the mind is really powerful.
Yeah.
And we know in a bad culture, the first people to leave are the people that value themselves the most. They're the first people to leave a bad culture. But sometimes you just have to put up with it. But take your mind and put it somewhere else. Do the job. This is what I'm getting paid. And for me, at the AMP, I look back and I go, it's fantastic. Met some good friends. Didn't necessarily enjoy the work, but it was fantastic.
That's such an important point, because you and I would both know, all through our lives over the years, people that now I've never really been able to do it. I've always needed to be where I'm passionate and where I feel like I can give value. But I know a lot of people who might pop into the pub years ago and say, "How you going?" And they'd be drinking a lot, and I'd say, "Well, how come you're doing this?" And they say, "Because I hate my job, so I live to the weekend, and then I get drunk all weekend, and then you start again Monday." And I've always thought, wow, how many people are struggling in this way and living like this? They hate where they spend most of their life. We spend most of our life at work.
I can tell you how many, because I just read a survey. Worldwide, it was nearly 80% of people hate going to work. There's a study that just came out. It's amazing.
That is, I don't have a word for that. That's
it's staggering.
That is so sad.
And it's interesting, because what you're saying is right. So if you can find your passion, then absolutely. But what I'm saying to you is see something good in what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's always something good in what you're doing, because I think we've got to be a little bit careful as a generation. We just don't become a generation of, well, I don't like that because I'm not going to do it. I don't like that, I'm not going to do it. I don't like that, I'm not going to do it. So
absolutely.
There's a balance between. So if you're in a job that you don't like, find something good about the job, and then understand that's what I'm doing it for. I used to say to my players all the time, I don't care what motivates you, as long as you're motivated. It didn't worry me what motivated them. For some players was how much money I could make. That's fine. I don't care. For some players, it was, just the ego around on AFL football. As long as they were motivated by something, that was really important. But what we've got to be careful of is when it starts to affect your mental health, and when it starts to pull you down, that's when we've got to start to have the conversations around why.
There's a different point. And you're right, even in jobs you love, there are parts that you don't like.
Yeah.
And you just you put up with it. But you're right, when it starts to impact every other part of your life, and it starts to really get you down in a dangerous way, then that's when we need to start changing things.
And have the conversation and change things and help each other, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why that stat is so damning. And that's why we've got to have conversations with our leaders, because our leaders can change the environment. Whether that's governmental leaders, from a state, federal point of view, whether it's the CEO of the biggest companies in Australia, they've got the most responsibility at the moment to change the workplaces, to change the environment to the way that it really should be.
Because it's not necessarily someone who just needs to be passionate about what they do. There's some studies that I've read that have said the most important thing is not necessarily the work that they're doing, but they feel valued in the workplace. So a lot of people don't need to find the big thing they're passionate about, but they do need to feel valued in the workplace.
And I think that's why that number's probably, it sounds daunting, but it's not like, I don't think 80% of people hate the place that they're working at per se.
Yeah.
They just don't want to go in there because of maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe there's a bullying thing. So what I'm saying, it's changeable to your point.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely changeable. If we start to fix some things, it might only be like 5% of the job that drives them mad. So they put down, well, I don't really like it. If we change those percentages, then most workplaces will become so much more vibrant and exciting. And so if we're talking about, empowerment and health and all those sorts of things, it's going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. That's so true. That's such a big takeout from today, because I just see so many people focusing on what they don't like. And, obviously we're very good at torturing ourselves with our minds, but when we don't train our minds, but I see so many people focusing on what they don't like about their work.
Yeah.
Whereas, if as you said, if 5% changed, or if that person wasn't bullying them, or if they felt like they could speak up, or if they felt like occasionally the boss walked by and said, hey, that was really great what you did, it would change completely how they feel about going to work.
There's so much data around connection. That's why this part, this is what's happening in Australia at the moment, is so bad. There's so much there's connection. People, we've always been in tribes. We've always been in groups of people. We've always been social. We always want interaction. So you're right. People want to feel valued at their workplace. They want to go in and have, the boss say, thanks for that. That was great. Yeah. Well done. What do you think about that, Roosie? Can you come into my office? I want to ask you about something. We want connection. We want to feel valued. So you're right. It's 100% fixable when we've got to start to have the conversations around what that really, really looks like. So my thing is, the alarm should be going off in the morning, and we should be going, I can't wait to get into the office. When we get back, I can't wait to get in the office. I know I'm going to have a tough day because I've got to do budgets or I've got to do this, but I can't wait to see my boss, and I can't wait to see my work colleagues, because they'll ask me how I'm going. They'll generally care, and we'll probably go for a walk at lunchtime, and we'll all go and have some healthy food together. And then, I've got, Jimmy and Mary and Sandy going to walk home with me after, walk back to South Melbourne after work. That's the way work should be.
Absolutely. People need, I think there's even a song about people needing people. I can't remember who wrote it, but without obviously going into too much detail about what's going on at the moment, how do you think we can help each other at the moment? Because we're isolated, we're not getting that community fix, we're not in the office. A lot of people do work well from home, but a lot of people get amazing creative ideas in the kitchen when they're getting a cup of tea, and they have the office banter, and they miss that connection. There are a lot of people living alone that aren't getting connection at the moment. So how do you think we can help everyone, really? But this is a Thrive for Men. So how can we help men with the isolation that's going on at the moment?
I think one of the saddest things I've seen is just self-interest. I think that for me has been the single biggest of all the things. It's the self-interest that we've seen, and the selfishness. So we've got to get outside of ourselves and put yourself in someone else's shoes. There's people losing businesses. There's people committing suicide.
There are.
We have to reach out. We have to be more empathetic. We have to shower people with love, not hatred. It's so sad. The
division in the community.
The division is just so sad, and it really makes me angry and mad. Reach out to people. Do as much as you can for your community and your friends and your family, and stop, judging people, for doing, whatever they're doing, and understand why they're doing it, But we've got to open up the conversations. We've got to have honest conversations, because the division, I've never seen a greater division in Australia in my life, and driven by leaders, which makes
absolutely
it even sadder, really.
I think last time we spoke, I said, Roosie, my friends and I always have different points of view and heated discussions even sometimes, but I've never in my life had a friend get so angry about a discussion as this one with opposing views?
Yeah, 100%. And my wife went out with a really good friend the other day, and the same thing happened. It's sort of like, and I'm finding now, you can't have the conversations, which I guess what I'm saying is really sad. It's like, and it's just this created this huge division that's going on, and that's not the way we're built. Humans are not built to be divided. Humans are built to be connected and understand and empathy. And I can only talk about great footy clubs. Great footy clubs are connected and understand people's different views and understand, where they're coming from and their backgrounds, and throughout that whole process, you help them and you guide them and you wrap your arm around them and you lift them up. We've got to start lifting people up and not pushing people down.
Now, when you and I grew up, there wasn't very much social media. Certainly, I didn't see it. How do you think social media is, because there's always a big emphasis on how social media affects women's body image, etc. Yeah. How do you think social media is impacting men?
Oh, dramatically, in a negative point of view. And the main reason I say that is because let's explore that, because it's a really good. Dylan asked me a question, it was the last year or the year before, said, Dad, if you could grow up in any era, what would you grow up in? I was like, it's a pretty deep question. So I actually sat down and thought about it for a while. I came back and said, mate, I wouldn't change anything. And then I went into why. I'm 58, so let's say born in 1963, started playing sport in 8 or 9, so early 70s, came to Fitzroy in sort of 1980. So my 10 years was outside playing sport, riding a bike. I would come home from school, literally put my bag down, I would go and have a couple of pieces of Vegemite and toast, and I'd be gone. And then I'd come back for dinner. So my point is, I was active. And what I'm saying about social media from that point of view, but also my role models weren't social media people.
Thank you. Yes.
My role models were see, touch, and feel.
Yes.
That's who my role models were. They were see, touch, and feel. They were dad, mum, friends, parents, teachers.
Yep.
Basketball coach Owen Hewen, Rob Morgan, John Thompson. I can name them to this day. They were my role models, and
they really impacted you on a human level, not on this social media. Look at me.
Enormous level of, because I could see their flaws. Not only could I see what they did and what they achieved and what they spoke about and how they guided me, I could see their flaws. And so now our younger generation role models are people we have no idea who they are. And all we see is the fancy car, the fancy boat, the number of followers. We really have no idea what their values are, what their morals are, what their behaviours are, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so many reasons we could go into, So I think one of the things we've got to get back to is outside, which again, you talk about this mess that we're in now. The worst thing is take away activity, take away playgrounds and basketball courts and basketball courts and footy grounds. That's the last thing you should be doing. The absolute last thing. But also, role models. Look around. Who do you aspire to be that and you've seen, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some positives about it, because we can see people's travels and their stories and what they're doing, and we can see our friends a bit more and all those sorts of things. So it's not all negative, but the negative.
I think that's when it started, though. That's what it was about. Certainly for me, I got on Facebook to keep in touch with friends and see what was happening, and especially friends who maybe were overseas. But now it's turned into this monster of comparison and people putting up whatever they want to show us what they want us to see.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're not living our true lives. We're living our lives through people that we're really, we've got no chance of becoming. And do we really want to become them?
That's the thing.
Do we really? I mean, that's my question. Clearly there's parts of it, and stuff like that. But I think, I wanted to make, my dad proud and my mum proud. I wanted to emulate the things that I got taught, by my basketball coaches and my football coaches, and I didn't want to let them down, and I didn't want to let my teammates down. And when I got to Fitzroy, the role models I had at Fitzroy, Gary Wilson, Bernie Quinlan, Laurie Serafini, Mickey Conlon, those guys, I wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
Genuinely, because I knew what they stood for as human beings. The question I would ask some of these young people today that are following some of these other people, do you really want to be like them? Or do you just want to have a lot of money?
Yeah, exactly right. Do you just want to flash car?
What part of it do you really like?
Yeah. And regarding sport, how much do you think sport plays in the mental health of community? Obviously, we know it, physical health, it's crucial. But, as far as sport goes, I think we need more sport, not less. How do you see sport playing a role in either corporate community or our local community?
Sport is incredibly underrated. Like, it's so underrated, and I got a friend, a really good friend of mine. Unfortunately, the son passed away, which was really, really sad. But my boys played with him at the local footy club, the Eastern Suburb Bulldogs, and even as recently as last week, I sent the mum a text, and I said, I really miss those times, and they miss those times, and we all miss those times, because the connection that we had as parents, the connection that players had together, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. And I'm so disappointed that we're seeing the youth of today missing out on the opportunities. Even I remember the PE teacher at Donvale Primary School. We'd do crossball.
I remember mine too.
Tunnel ball, and we'd be outside, and lacrosse, and
Red Rover. Wow.
Yeah, with the things we did. Joe Zekin was my high school PE teacher. We play hockey and cross, as I said, and I love those times. The things I learned, and I know I've gone on and been in that industry for many, many years, but even in the corporate world, let me tell you this, and I will tell you this unequivocally, and what I picked up probably about 18 months in, that the best leaders had always played some form of team sport, men and women. The best leaders had always been involved in team sport, and they'd learned concepts that no one else, I couldn't work out why no one was picking up on them. And I noticed it was a really common theme. So to your point, it's not about sport. I mean, clearly there's an activity and there's winning and losing and fun and all that. But the concept,
so much more.
It's so much more than, if you think footy at a junior level or netball at a junior level is just about, shooting baskets and kicking the ball. Nah, 100% no way.
It's so true, because when I was involved with a high-level amateur footy club, Mount Barker, and I was their fitness trainer, and the best times that I look back on have actually nothing to do with the games and what happened during the games. I'm very happy we won 2 premierships, but it's about, I have memories of standing on the sidelines and chatting to people, and the club rooms afterwards, and the going around to the footy players' house for tennis as a group on a Sunday, and all of those things that happen when you're involved in a tight-knit community. And even the local cops were part of it, and it was just amazing, the relationships that you built. And that's what I remember. I don't remember so much the actual games. I remember my connections.
Having played at the highest level, I'm the same. Like, it's funny, like the things.
Isn't it amazing?
The things I remember now as a successful player and coach and the stories that we tell on Sundays now, are about the little things that had happened, and the trainers and the boot starter and the football manager and all those, and the fans and the people we see and know and all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. I did a talk the other week about legacy, a legacy talk, and I explained, your bio is what you do. Your legacy is how you do it. Your bio your bio is what you do, but your legacy is how you do it. And great organisations leave a legacy, because great organisations do it the right way. Yeah, and I think that sums up what you're saying. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, it's not necessarily about because you could have two clubs in the same competition that have won 2 premierships, but one's got a great legacy. They've both got the same bio, but one's got a much better legacy than the other one.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. So can I just ask you, I know I'm very conscious of your time, what has built you to be such a great leader? Because there are other people in AFL that don't coach their clubs like you. There are other coaches that would not get a player like Spider giving them words like that. What has built this ability within you to provide this for other people?
I think the experience that I had were incredibly invaluable. And, that's why I'm so passionate about culture and creating the right environment, because, my parents created the right environment for me, to play. We moved out to Dunbar, which was a bunch of orchards back in the 70s, and they provided me with an amazing environment to play sport. They both played sport. I then was taught the right way by the Fitzroy players, and then I went through a lot of hardship in terms of the club itself and, the lack of money and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's the experience that I've seen and the people that I've come in contact with that have allowed me to see a lot of different things. And, then moving to Sydney and seeing the Swans and going from a poor club to winning, playing in the grand final in 1996. So I think I have a really good self-awareness. I think that's one thing. I think I have, a healthy ego without thinking I'm too important. I think the things that I'd see that destroy organisations are ego, lack of self-awareness, I think is
absolutely
is a real impediment to success, and an enormous ego is an impediment to success. Over the long term, you can get over that hurdle, in the short term, but I think in the long term, but I've got to credit so many people that I've come in contact with over the years that have been, great role models to me and helping shape the person I am today.
Yeah, that's an amazing response, Roosy. You're incredibly humble. And I know anyone that knows you will say that about you.
Yeah, and I think
everything you've achieved.
Yeah, I've been taught that by Gary Wilson and Bernie Quinlan, who two are the probably most talented players, that I've ever seen and reached the highest accolades. But one of the things that struck me at Fitzroy when I walked into that club as a 16, 17-year-old, there was no groups. There was no cliquey groups. There was no, there's Gary Wilson, Bernie Quinlan, and, 4 or 5 of the best players. It was never like that, and Gary and Bernie as our 2 most talented players were our best people. So how can you help not be like that if your superstar players are like that and you're a young person trying to fit in, to our point earlier on? So I'm a young person going, what gets valued at this club and why, and what do our leaders do? And then in some of my first experiences to go away with these guys, Leon Harris, but Peter Francis, who'd come from Carlton and come to Fitzroy, and Lee Carlson. What human beings, I went to Hawaii and, they took me under their wing, and, we went to the North Shore. And so we weren't drinking during the day. We were actually exploring. And so my reality is based on their behaviour.
Wow.
That's the way I look at things, because they were incredible role models and
so
incredible people.
Their legacy on you.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I'll never forget, when I won the premiership in 2005, with the Swans, a number of Fitzroy players that genuinely were excited. They had a function for me down at Albert Park. And it was so, my success was their success. And I felt that as well. And I was so glad that they did, because I wouldn't have achieved what I did with Sydney had I not been at Fitzroy as a 17-year-old. In no way, shape or form would I have reached the heights as a coach and won the premiership had I not gone to that football club.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Roosy. I really appreciate your time. And I know that anyone listening will get so much out of this, especially the men listening. Now, if anyone wants to get in touch with you regarding corporate culture, leadership, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, on our website, www.performancebydesign.co, but also I'm accessible through LinkedIn, and those of you know that sent me a message through that platform. I always get back to people. So, yeah, jump on LinkedIn. But yeah, go through the website, look up Performance by Design. You can connect with us there, and I'm always accessible and always happy to help. And yeah, even guys that are struggling, please reach out. You know, if you want to reach out directly through Nant, get hold of her. She can get hold of me. You know, I'm more than happy to have a conversation directly as well.
Thanks, Rosie. That's amazing. I remember years ago we were talking about traveling to Fiji. So we'll just keep it in house for the moment, and we'll just talk to people over the phone and over Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it seems a long time ago, doesn't it?
Thank you so much for your time. I will speak to you soon. Thanks, Rosie.
Pleasure.